I keep seeing people who are hiding their faces. I first noticed it in a photo from Kasey's birthday party. There was a group photo of us, all huddled together. We were smiling for the camera. But between me and Jack, you could see a man sitting at a table behind us. He was hiding his face in his hands. Guess that guy doesn't like being photographed, Jack laughed. Yeah, it makes sense though. No one stranger's having a picture of you, you know? Especially with all those weird facial recognition and stuff cameras do nowadays. It was still weird though. Looking at the picture sent chills down my spine. I mean, his face was turned directly towards the camera. If he really didn't want to be photographed, couldn't he have just tilted his head way down or put the menu in front of it? Why the creepy weeping angel pose? But some people are weird about being photographed. My brother never smiles for family photos just to annoy my mom. One of my college friends has to have like 5 pounds of makeup on her face before she's willing to be in a photo. Maybe this guy always hid his face in his hands like that. He thought I was being funny or something. And so I forgot about it. A few days later, though, I went to the grocery store after work. I passed a little girl in the bread aisle, standing next to her mom. As I passed, I looked down to give her a little wave, and stopped dead. She was hiding her face in her hands, just like the guy from the photo. Relax, she's probably just crying about something. That's what I told myself as I hurried away. But then why was her face turning in time with mine? As though she were watching me, between the cracks in her fingers. I threw my groceries on the conveyor belt. Cashier raised her eyebrow as the carton of eggs fell with a loud, rattling sound. I'm in a hurry. I breathed as I ran over to the keypad and stuck my card in. It had started to rain. Light, pattering raindrops fell on the windshield, bleeding into little rivers that distorted the road before me. Swish. I turned on the wipers, and they swept through. I couldn't stop my fingers from frantically tapping the wheel. You had to calm down. Don't let it be like the last time. I rushed into the house. The rain a downpour now. By the time I got inside, my shirt was damp and sticking to my skin. Jenny, you're back, girl. I raced up the stairs and ran into the bathroom. My hand shook as I grabbed the pill bottle out of the medicine cabinet. The pills rattled loudly inside, like a warning sign. And the letters printed across it read, expired 0421. But I couldn't. I couldn't. Jack called through the door. Are you okay? I'm fine. Just have a bad headache. I spent the rest of the evening wrapped up in a blanket, watching some stupid Hallmark movie, as Jack listened to some podcast downstairs. And now, I'm not sure if it was the time or the meds, but I almost laughed at the incident earlier. I almost had a panic attack because some little girl was crying at the store. It's so stupid. God forbid someday I'll actually have real problems and real things to think about. I fell into a peaceful, dreamless sleep. The next morning, I went to work as usual. That was a good sign. Last time I'd had a panic attack, I'd had to call in sick. I took the elevator up to the 5th floor, humming to myself. I sat down in my office and worked on emails for an hour over coffee. And then it happened. Taking a little break, I walked over to the window. I looked down at all the other people hurrying along the sidewalks down below. But one was standing still. A woman in a black dress who was looking straight up at me. But of course, she wasn't actually looking, because her hands were hiding her face. That same creepy peekaboo pose that the other two had. The blood drained out of my face. What the fuck? I backed away from the window. I kept backing away until my leg collided with my desk. I yelped as I fell backwards, grabbing the edge of my desk just at the last second. Breathing hard, I collapsed in the chair. I left work early, claiming I felt sick, and got into bed for the rest of the day. I kept telling myself that I shouldn't freak out, and there were more perfectly good reasons for what I'd seen. Coincidence, a flash mob, a weird conspiracy plot by my ex-boyfriend to scare me. The doorbell ringing snapped me out of my thoughts. Jack was still at work, so I went downstairs. My hands fell on the doorknob, and I was about to open it, but something in me made me pause. A sort of itchy and tingling feeling, like I was being watched. I tilted my face and brought my eye to the peephole. No. There on the front porch stood our elderly neighbor. It was Miss Rose, except her face was hidden in her hands, just like all the other people I'd seen. That creepy peekaboo pose, wrinkled spotted hands covering her face. I drew the deadbolt and ran upstairs. I've been sitting up here for an hour now, waiting for Jack to come home, but part of me is terrified. What if, when he comes inside, he's hiding his face too? What then? I couldn't just wait for Jack to come home. What if he was hiding his face from me, like all the others? In that horrible, weeping angel pose. So I called him at work. I video called him. I breathed a sigh of relief when he picked up. He wasn't hiding his face. "Hi, love," he said with a grin. "Video calling me? What's the occasion? When will you be back?" His smile faded. "Is something wrong?" "Everything's fine. Just trying to figure out what to do for dinner." The doorbell rang, echoing up the stairs. No. Miss Rose came back. "Is someone at the door?" Jack asked, frowning. "Yeah, it's just a delivery. I'll go get it late. I'll see you soon. Bye." Before he could say any more, I hung up. I lay there on the bed, staring up at the ceiling, my heart going a million miles an hour. The doorbell rang once and twice and 3 times more before it finally stopped. I lay there, listening to the hum of the heater. Thoughts swirled in my head, but for some reason, my mind kept boomeranging back to what Dr. Thompson said all those years ago. "They aren't following you." He leaned towards me in his seat, dark eyes filled with compassion. I know that your ex-boyfriend threatened you, but it's been several years. Most likely, if he was going to do something, he would have done it by now. I'm going to prescribe you something to help with panic attacks. You're lucky you only hit the curb. You could get into a much more dangerous accident next time. I was interrupted with my thoughts by the groan of a garage door opening. I ran down the stairs. My heart was racing. The familiar thump of the garage door closing, then the swoosh of the fridge opening. I ran into the kitchen and stopped in my tracks. The fridge door hung open, hiding Jack from view. All I could see were his brown leather shoes sticking out from under the crack. "Jack?" He didn't reply. "Jack." His foot took a step back. The side of his face slowly came into view around the side of the door. A tuft of dark hair, then an ear. "Sorry," he said, gesturing to his full mouth. "I'm starving." I collapsed into the kitchen chair. "Oh my God, you scared me." The fridge door shut. He swallowed. "I'm sorry. How was your day?" "It was fine. It was just fine." I forced a smile. "How was yours?" He shrugged. "Okay." I didn't tell him about what I'd seen, but I had to ask, and I had to know. "Hey Jack, can I ask you something?" I got out my phone and pulled up the photo from Kasey's birthday party. "That guy in the background, what is he doing?" We already talked about this yesterday. He's hiding his face from the camera because he doesn't want to be photographed. Or whatever. "Yes, but how? What exactly is he doing?" Jack gave me a weird look. "He's doing this," he said. He raised his hands into his face in the same peekaboo pose. Fear shot through me. I grabbed his arms and pulled them away from his face. "Don't do it." "Okay," he said uncertainly. "Sorry, Never mind." I put away my phone and stood up. "I'm gonna cook some pasta, I think. You want me to put on extra for you?" "Sure." So I'm not imagining it, I thought as I poured water into the pot. It's not some weird hallucination or something. There is photographic evidence that at least one guy was hiding his face like that. At the moment, I wanted to tell Jack everything, but I couldn't. Jack would no doubt just sigh and set up another appointment with Dr. Thompson. And I loved Jack, but there was the one thing I hated about him. Opening up to him often meant suggestions of appointments or vacations or books to read. Not just engaging with me and trying to help me work through it. The rest of the evening went okay though. Miss Rose didn't come to the door anymore, and Jack and I even had a nice dinner together. I eventually fell into a deep sleep, comforted by the sound of Jack breathing next to me. I woke with a start. The bedroom was dark, and shafts of moonlight fell through the curtains, falling on the soft bedding. I sucked in a breath and rolled over, reaching for Jack. But as my arm wrapped around his waist, I noticed something odd. His arms weren't splayed out straight in front of him, like they usually were. Instead, the elbows were bent. My heart dropped. "Jack," I whispered. He was still as a statue, facing away from me, his chest slightly rising and falling with each breath. "Jack," I said louder this time. And then he did it. He rolled towards me, slowly. My blood turned to ice. He was hiding his face. His hands were pressed against his face in that horrible weeping angel pose. He didn't say anything. He didn't move. He just laid there, facing me. This close up, I realized the silvers of darkness between his fingers. There was something horribly wrong with them. They looked too dark. Even in the darkness of the bedroom, I couldn't see the glint of his eyes or any details in his face. Just a black void. I screamed. His face slowly tilted up as I jumped out of the bed, as if he could see me between the cracks of his fingers. I jumped out of bed and ran into the hallway. I could hear his footsteps behind me, creaking across the old wood. I stumbled down the stairs and ran through the kitchen. His bare feet slapped on the tile behind me. I ran into the garage, panting. I grabbed my keys and dove into my car. I didn't dare look at him as I peeled out of the driveway. After seeing Jack hiding his face with his hands in that horrible peekaboo pose, I drove into town. It was all I could do. It was just a little after 3 a.m. and the streets were empty. All the little shops that lined the sidewalk were dark. I drove around Main Street for several minutes in a loop without even really realizing what I was doing. I didn't know what the hell was going on. Paranoid delusions? That's what Dr. Thompson called them. But I never hallucinated anything before. Just thought people were watching me. That the house was bugged, that my ex was stalking me. And I moved past that. I mean, the worst of it was years ago. I'd moved on. I moved forward. I got married, and I started a new life. Besides, Jack had seen the man hiding his face in the photo. And that was proof that I wasn't imagining it. I pulled over and parked outside of the bookstore. I made sure my doors were locked and then pulled out my phone. People hiding their face. I typed it into the search bar. But that just brought up a bunch of silly stock images. People covering their face with their hands. Again, more stock images. People following me, hiding their faces like weeping angels in Doctor Who. Bingo. Among all the hits for the Doctor Who wiki was a forum post, dated a few months ago by a user named Purple Hair Girl 55. Kept seeing these people hiding their faces in their hands, sort of like the weeping angels in Doctor Who. I see them in random places, on the subway, at the store. It's so weird. Is anyone else seeing this? Is this some sort of advertisement or psychological experiment or something? There was a bunch of replies. Most of them weren't helpful. Just people commenting things like, "Wow, creepy, update please." But one stood out. It was a warning in all caps. Do not let them see your face. I stared at the phone. My heart was sinking. They'd already seen my face. All of them. Did that mean... I scrolled down. There was one last post from Purple Hair Girl 55. I just got back from class, and my roommate was doing it. I tried talking to her and everything, but she wouldn't say anything. She just stared at me with her fucking hands over her fucking face. What the hell is going on? And that was it. The last post from her. Not only on the thread, but site-wide. I swallowed. Whatever happened to her is gonna happen to me. My heart pounded into my chest. That horrible, familiar spiral of dread pulling me down into nothing. I tried to focus on my breathing. In, out, in, out. But the weight didn't stop. I was drowning. I couldn't. Tap, tap, tap. A soft tapping on the window. I looked up. Oh no. Standing right outside my window was a police officer. Behind me, in the rearview mirror, there was a police cruiser parked with its lights off. "License and registration," came the muffled voice from the window. I leaned over and opened the glove compartment. I pulled out the license and registration. I breathed in and out, trying to swallow the dizzying panic building in my chest. Jack is still your emergency contact, and he'll call him if you're ill, or worse, drop you off at home to get some rest. Normal. Calm. Breathe in. Breathe out. I turned to the window and rolled it down, and I offered the documents. He didn't react. He can't be one of them. From this angle, I couldn't see his face, but I could see his hands. They were hanging at his sides, not held up to his face. I'm okay. It's just some officer asking why you're parked on the road at 3 a.m., which is a totally valid question. But he still wasn't taking the documents either. Officer? He bent his head down. He did not have a face. The sides of his head just suddenly ended into an empty nothingness where the face should have been. Darkness, a void, a pit, the complete absence of anything. I screamed. He grabbed the bottom of the window and shoved his head inside. I felt a horrible, invisible pull on my own face. Like 1,000 tiny magnets were just underneath the surface of my skin, pulling at my entire face, sucking it into the void. I reached over and slammed the button to roll up the window. His fingers gripped the edge of the window, pushing it down with inhuman strength. The window made a horrible ratcheting whine as I tried to roll it up, but couldn't. The man pushed further into the car, his lack of face inches from mine. Hot pain bloomed across my face as the pull grew stronger. I looked into the horrible darkness, the nothingness, and dread flooded through my body. This is it. This is how I die. But then 7 words popped into my head. Do not let them see your face. I raised my shaking hands. I slowly put them up to my face, blocking the view of that horrible void. The pain seared across my skin, but I ignored it. I pushed my hands against my face, and just like that, the pain stopped. The silence filled the car, ringing in my ears. Seconds ticked by, and then I heard footsteps against the pavement. He was leaving. I waited until I heard the door of his cruiser slam. Only then did I take my hands away from my face. Then I jabbed the starter button. The engine roared to life. I slammed my foot on the accelerator, and the car peeled out onto the road. I turned every which way, making sharp turns and taking back roads until I lost the police car. Then I was coasting down the highway, destination nowhere, trying to figure out what to do now. One thing was certain though, I could not go home. I pictured Jack lying in our bed with that horrible emptiness instead of the face that I loved. Who'd stolen his face? Had one of the faceless come to him? Maybe Miss Rose rang the doorbell again after I'd fallen asleep. Maybe he answered it. And now, he was gone.